Today we're going to talk about sun exposure and the importance of sun exposure. Something that is freely given, you don't have to pay for it, and yet we take it for granted.
True.
And so we've just about written a blog on sun exposure and the importance of sun exposure. One of the few things that you've come across, just been quite amazing to come across the fact that you didn't know, or let's start there.
With the sun exposure, I didn't know. Well, everybody says don't go in the sun, you're gonna get skin cancer. So you go in the sun and you think, okay, I have to put layers of sunblock, or if I'm driving I need to wear my sleeve socks. I think they call sleeve socks.
Yeah.
So wear that and have a whole lot of sunblock and sunglasses, and you don't want to go in the sun because you think you're going to get skin cancer. That's the biggest thing that all health authorities overseas, South Africa, and everybody has said. Too much sun exposure gives you skin cancer, and that's just it. Too much sun exposure. They don't tell you that 5 to 15 minutes of sun exposure is actually good for you. So I didn't actually know that spending a little bit of time in the sun and getting that good sunshine would really be good. So, and they also say that they always say that the fairer you are, or the more light-skinned you are, you burn faster and you're more at a risk of skin cancer. So being more fair, or on the fairer side of the spectrum, I was like, okay, I can't really go out in the sun, I'm going to burn, and I don't want to burn, I don't want to get skin cancer, I don't want to age, I don't want to have wrinkles, I don't want to have any of this. So I was like, I'm not doing that. So I would prefer staying in the shade. Like even if you go to the beach, put up a shade, you don't think, let's first spend a couple of minutes in the sun and then put up the shade. So that was interesting for me, is that 5 to 15 minutes have actually vitamin D boosting effects, which is very good for literally every single person. And I would say specifically for me as a woman, because from the age of 25, we start losing muscle mass and bone density. And it's obviously increased once we reach menopause and a little higher. So if I can get sunshine now till I'm 50, that's good. Then at least I have some vitamin D to sort out my bones, and I don't really have to worry about taking supplements. Also interesting, well, the supplements thing was, supplements don't do the exact same job as vitamin D, as the sun naturally gives you. And that's what I found shocking, because everybody, you go to the pharmacy, they're buying the vitamin D supplements, calcium, omega-3, omega-6, everybody's buying those little packaged tablets. But research is actually showing that it's not the tablets that are actually as effective as they're supposed to be, especially in terms of vitamin D. It's actually the sun that you need.
Yeah, and so what you sort of spoke about is two things. The first thing is the fear of sun exposure. A lot of people have this fear based on the idea that's been put out there that you're going to get skin cancer. But I think it's quite important to speak on the benefits of sun exposure, and that sun exposure is actually not a bad thing if you get it in its appropriate amount, and there's tremendous effects that you can get from sun exposure. And then the second thing that you spoke about is the supplementation, and how that doesn't really work well with, or it's not the equivalent to getting sun exposure. And the reason for that is a lot of people think the sun is actually vitamin D, but the sun is not vitamin D. The sun, particularly the UVB, causes vitamin D to be reproduced in the body, which is actually a hormone. So vitamin D is actually a hormone that gets reproduced in the body itself, and that is used for, or the benefit of that is, paramount. It's quite important. Now, we sort of spoke about this yesterday, and I think it's worth sharing again. There was this dental hygienist, actually a dentist, and this is in the 1930s.
Okay.
His name is Dr. Weston Price. And so Dr. Weston Price, this is before sort of modern science, but he noticed that all his patients that came in, and he was based mostly in Europe, so where there's less sun exposure.
Correct.
So, and he noticed that a lot of his patients that coming in had very poor oral hygiene. Their jaws are a lot more narrow, their teeth were crooked, and they were almost squished together. And he wanted to figure out what the heck is going on. Why is there such an issue? And so he decided to go to a place where people have good teeth. and he would travel the world, and he noticed he traveled to particular places very close to the equator, and there he would notice that these sort of people actually have better oral hygiene, and so and this is purely based on observation. So he didn't test anything; he just observed, and he noticed that the closer you are to the equator, the better your oral hygiene is. Now, why is oral hygiene such an important thing? If you have bad oral hygiene, you must probably have a bad immune system. You must probably have some form of gut issues. You have some form of an immune issue, and that in and of itself is quite important. We can speak a lot about the microbiome within the gut, but we all know and we all agree that if you have a bad gut or leaky gut, you're going to have a lot of issues.
Sure.
And so that is how he linked oral hygiene to the sun. And so they're showing that what happens is, and he didn't really say it in these words, but now research is showing that the sun, us exposing ourselves to the sun, will actually cause the increase in vitamin D, and then that causes better bone density, and that causes better absorption of calcium and so forth. Yes. And that's how you get the betterment of it, and then also with the increase of your immune system. So I think that's, just as a premise, that's the importance of having good sun exposure.
You're saying that, so even the research is showing that exactly what you're saying about this dentist research, that the people that are in well-lit areas or places that get a lot of sunshine, they actually they have better vitamin D production in their body, because when they go outside there's more sunshine, as opposed to people where they're living where there's less sunshine. And they also notice that research is showing that when it comes to like spring, summer, autumn, winter, right? So the darker months, so autumn and winter, people suffering from seasonal affective disorder, that is, they're trying to use sunlight or light therapy as a treatment modality for seasonal affective disorder. So showing that the sun actually boosts your mood. That it does, so the more you are exposed to good sunlight, the better your mood will be, the better, like you said, your immune system will be. So linking up sunlight to, that was also quite interesting for me, that seasonally people can go into depression and anxiety based on no sunlight. Literally no sunlight, and you're sad and depressed.
And I think that's a fantastic point. And to add to that, so there's obviously then this link between sunlight and mood, but I think just based on the previous point that I made, there's a link between the gut and sunlight. Correct. And so because you have a happy gut, because your gut is healthy, which is most of where you store most of your happy hormones, serotonin, that's why it will affect your mood. And 100%. So but it just makes a lot of sense. You sort of link, imagine someone that's always outdoors and outside, and you just perceive them to be a lot more happier.
True.
It's just a fact, where if you imagine someone being in the cold, you imagine them being slightly more depressed of some sort. So there is a direct link to mood, which is quite important. Is there anything else that you've come across that was quite important?
In terms of the psychology side, what I was thinking of now is what the research showed with regards to Alzheimer's and dementia. So and this was a nurse, actually, I think, if I'm not wrong, this was a nurse that put her patients in the sun, and those patients did better, they recovered better. I think you told me this.
Yeah.
I think you told me this. But research has also showed in terms of the the vitamin D production in Alzheimer's and dementia patients, those that are exposed to the sun and that have more sunlight hours, specifically not the direct rays of sunlight between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., but that early morning sunlight and that late evening sunlight, those people actually have improvement or a lesser decline in terms of Alzheimer's and dementia. So I found that really interesting, because as people get older, they tend to stay more indoors, they tend to sleep more, which makes them more depressed. And just going outside and spending time outside for 5 to 15 minutes, depending obviously on your skin complexion, up to 30 minutes if you are darker skin, is actually beneficial for you when you're older. And I never ever thought of that. That's what shocked me, was that it actually helps with cognitive decline. It helps with cognitive decline.
Sure, that's powerful. And you know, mentioning so that the lady, or it's actually a guy that you were referring to, Florence Nightingale.
Yeah.
So he noticed, and this is way back in the day, there were patients on the one side and patients on the other side, but there's only a ray of sun coming from the one side, and you notice that the patients on that one side were doing a lot better than the patients on the other side, just because they got that sun exposure. And they then used sun as a form of treatment called heliotherapy, because they've recognized the importance of it. So it's not a subtle improvement. There's a direct physical improvement just in you healing the body. And so just to sort of make it more relevant into today's time. So COVID is something that we're all familiar with. Now, there have been studies showing that people who contract COVID or are quite symptomatic because of COVID, they are significantly depleted of vitamin D, significantly. And they've shown that that to be the case throughout. There's a meta-analysis been done, about 12 studies, and that's what they've shown.
Why are you saying that? You know, when COVID just started last year and like nobody knew anything about COVID, but people were sending out their recommendations. And I don't know if you remember, they said you must take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D supplementation every day. Or calcium, one of the two. But by doing that, somebody told us, when my husband had COVID, that he must sit outside at 10 in the morning for a couple of minutes, and it will help with COVID. And you know what? We actually seen this with my neighbor downstairs. She had COVID, and we found her sitting outside, and we were like, she's sitting outside with a mask. I don't think she's well. We didn't know she had COVID at that point. So we were nicely, calmly walking up our stairs, and we were like, but why you, like, I greeted her and she didn't greet me back, and I was like, okay, something's not right. And then she WhatsApped me and told me, no, she has COVID. But she was taking the doctor's advice of sitting in the sun for a short period of time. And I promise you, when I spoke to her afterwards, she said that the combination of things that she did actually helped. So the fact that she did the sunlight thing, that my husband did the sunlight exposure, what happened with that is they got their vitamin D naturally.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, you guys don't really need medication in that sense. So use what we have.
100%.
So I can agree with that research. That's with the meta-analysis. Because I mean, we've seen it. I've seen it with 2 people already. So I would, if I had COVID, I would sit in the sun.
Yeah, but it's weird. Like I also had COVID, and naturally I was just drawn towards the sun. Like, you know, it's somehow intuitively I felt as if the sun is going to somehow nourish me and just get me feeling better. It was an intuitive thing, and no one really told me I need to go and sit in the sun. But I just found myself going there naturally. And I think, you know, when you are quite in tune, you know, you will sort of do things. And that is to the betterment of your body.
100%.
And now let's talk slightly about supplementation, because we live in a day and age where unfortunately people aren't exposed to sun, and we're always indoors and so forth. Now a lot of people recommend that you get your vitamin D dosage or supplementation, but unfortunately that's just not going to cut it completely, because you know, vitamins, and you know, they always go hand in hand with something else.
True.
You need an activator to activate it and to help to reabsorb it. And so one of the issues with that people have, they say, you know, they're taking the vitamin D, but nothing's sort of happening. And the reason is they're missing out on a key component, and that is K2. So K2 is that's the activator for vitamin D. And so if you're taking vitamin D, it has to be supplemented with K2, which is just, you know, that's just what it is. That's just, if you are going to take supplementation, that is something that you would have to do. I just thought I needed to say that, because to take vitamin D on its own is not going to help.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to say about sun exposure, because people are going to be like, they say we must go sit in the sun, and now we burnt and we have sunburn and we look so terrible. So the thing with sun exposure, too much is obviously bad for you, as is anything. Sugar, cold drinks, anything is too bad for you. Too much of anything is too bad for you. So the research was showing there are ways of still getting your 5 to 15 minutes without getting sunburned and without having the ill effects of the sun exposure. So everybody's been in the sun, sunburn, there's some people peel, some people get wrinkly, some people have leathery skin, and that's because they are too much in the sun. So I would say, so recommendations in terms of that would be, the sun also damages your eyes, like direct sunlight to your eyes. So that's why a lot of people wear their sunglasses. So what I found interesting is that you need to get your 5 to 15 minutes, but don't do it in your direct sunlight time. So between 10 and 4. But definitely, if you can in the morning, 5 to 15 minutes, even while driving. The sun does come through our windows. It is direct sunlight, unless your windows are tinted. But get the sunlight. So I feel that driving to work every morning for me, I get some sunlight on my arms. And the main thing they said is your arms, face, and legs, but that's out of the picture when you're driving. So yeah, I would say even weekends, if you're taking your dog for a walk or you're sitting in the garden or doing something just to get some form of boosting vitamin D, but don't do too much of it.
Yeah.
Wear sunscreen if you're going to be in the sun for more than 15 minutes, depending on your skin complexion. And wearing a hat if you're going to be out for too long, and wearing sunglasses to protect your eyes because the sun damages the retina of the eye.
Yeah, and we also discussed how sun exposure helps with rheumatoid arthritis. A lot of your autoimmune diseases seems to be benefited from sun exposure. And that's also a massive thing, because something as simple as sun exposure, if that could have a positive effect on your RA or whatever it is that you have, why not utilize it, and why not get the benefit of sun exposure? And so one of the reasons why I believe that sun exposure is so beneficial for, let's say, for example, rheumatoid arthritis, is due to the reabsorption of calcium. And so sun exposure via creatine, vitamin D actually encourages calcium reabsorption in the body, and that's why there's this improvement in your symptoms when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis. But I think it goes far more than just that. But I think at the end of the day, we can all agree sun exposure, a good amount of sun exposure is appropriate. A good amount of sun exposure is for your complete benefit. And yeah, is there anything else that you would love to share on that?
I think we've tied up most of it from the research that we've done.
Yeah, so get
but
some
read our
sunlight.
blog, and then you guys can see if we missed anything.
Yes, read the blogs. I think there's some nice insights there, and get that sun exposure.